This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Newspaper Day 2022. On behalf of the Ad Club board and all of our members and all of our committee members, we want to say a big thank you for coming to join our event today. For those who don't know me, my name is Chris Ramey. I am the president of the Advertising Club of Toronto, and we're really excited for Newspaper Day today. It is our first virtual event of the year. We had a very successful ski day in February, and we're really happy to announce that we will also be having our golf day for the first time in 2 years this summer, coming up in July, and it will be at Glen Abbey this year. So hopefully everyone on the call can make it out this year. Now, most of you are probably aware that the Advertising Club of Toronto is a not-for-profit organization. All the profit that we do make from our events go back to our industry. We donate a lot of our money to student bursaries, including the schools across Ontario, to really help that next marketing or the next generation of marketing students coming into the industry. And we also donate money to NABS. Most of you know NABS is a fantastic organization, and we're really happy to announce that a portion of today's proceeds will be going to NABS. So a big thank you to all of our sponsors. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Norman Lang, who is the chairperson for Newspaper Day.
Thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Norman Lang. I'm the Director of Advertising and E-commerce at Lastman's Bad Boy, but even more importantly, I am the chairperson for today's virtual Newspaper Day. On behalf of the Advertising Club of Toronto, welcome to our first Newspaper Day event in 2022. It gives me great inspiration and personal pride to launch our event today. Trust continues to be a key factor for advertising, and newspapers top the list according to research from the News Media Canada study in December of 2021. Half of Canadians say they trust the ads they find in their print and digital newspapers. A credible media environment often boosts the trust levels in the ads, particularly in a transparent and regulated newspaper environment where the content is produced by credible journalists and vetted by editors. Traditional forms of advertising continue to be top the list when Canadian adults are asked in which medium they completely or somewhat trust the advertising. When readers trust the ads in printed newspapers, and their websites, it creates a halo effect for not only their brands, but also all advertising. Today, our panel of industry experts will provide their insights on how visual storytelling is changing the perception of how publishers provide content to their audiences. Thank you all so much for spending your valuable time with us here today. We realize it's extremely valuable, and that we all know moving forward in this unprecedented territory, it will yet be difficult and challenging. Our committee has worked tirelessly over the last few months to bring you a program today that is not only exciting, informative, but we hope inspiring. And speaking of the committee members, I would like to take a moment to thank them for their time and commitment to our event today. Carrie Anderson from Torstar Media, Anique Pierre from Glacier Media Group, Sarah Fleming, the Globe and Mail Media Group, Nancy Love, the Globe and Mail Media Group, Heather Spicer, Torstar, Kelly Levson, News Media Canada, Suzanne Perron, Postmedia Network, Shelley Falico, and Kimberly Roos from Quebecor. A big thank you for everything that you've done to get us to today, and all the hard work and time and commitment that you've put in to what I believe will be a fantastic event today. Now I'd like to acknowledge and thank our 2022 Newspaper Day sponsors. They are the Globe and Mail Media Group, Torstar, Vividata, Glacier Media Group, Quebecor, Postmedia, and Kinetic. Thank you so much for your support and trust in us here today. This event could not have begun, started, and been actualized without your support. Thank you. And also, a very big thank you to our title sponsor, News Media Canada. News Media Canada is the voice of print and digital news media industry in Canada, where it represents hundreds of trusted titles in every province and territory. News Media Canada is an advocate in public policy for daily and community media outlets and contributes to the ongoing evolution of news media industry by raising awareness and promoting the benefits of news media across all platforms. Every year during the first week of October, News Media Canada spearheads National Newspaper Week, a celebration of the essential services provided by the news media industry across North America. This past year, Canadian artist Ola Volo partnered with News Media Canada to create a custom piece of art featuring 3 stoic, trailblazing characters representing journalists and readers and multiple Canadian landmarks to celebrate the diversity of people and places and perspectives across the country. Thank you, News Media Canada. And now a short video from our title sponsor, News Media Canada.
"2021 was a tough year for all industries. But through it all, Canadian news media kept us connected and informed. Based on new research, we knew that 9 in 10 Canadians read newspapers weekly, either in print or digital format, and that newspapers continue to be relevant in an increasingly digital world, with 95% of newspaper readers accessing their newspaper content online. So while the love for newspapers was real, we needed a way to remind Canadians about how much they rely on them and give them a chance to show their appreciation. That's why for National Newspaper Week, we wanted to spark conversation about the important role that newspapers continue to play in a healthy democracy. And there's no better way to spark conversation than through a compelling and engaging piece of art. Enter Canadian artist Ola Volo. We partnered with Ola to create a custom piece of artwork designed to get Canadians talking about the critically important role newspapers play in upholding Canadian democracy. Launching on National Newspaper Week, Canadians could purchase the limited edition artwork and journal, with a portion of proceeds being donated to Canadian journalists for free expression. With the goal of sparking conversation, there's no doubt that Ola's collection got Canadians talking.
Check this out.
Oh, wow. This is the beautiful print.
Plus, Ola's artwork inspired a national multimedia ad campaign, including ads in almost 400 print and digital newspapers, a full-page spread in one of Canada's top lifestyle magazines, and billboards in 7 markets across the country. All in all, some very good news indeed.
Great video. For those of you who are joining us here today, we're going to be doing a draw for selected prizes provided by some of our sponsors. That draw will be individuals who are actually with us here today. You will be contacted if you're a winner within 24 to 48 hours from a member of our committee. But the prizes that are available to be won are from News Media Canada, a framed and signed limited edition Ola Volo print. We have one winner for that print. We have 4 winners that are available for softcover journals featuring champions artwork. From Torstar, there's 5 winners that will be available to win a 1-year digital subscription to thestar.com. For Postmedia Network, there'll be a winner for a 1-year digital subscription to thenationalpost.com. There'll be 2 winners sponsored by the Globe and Mail for a 1-year digital subscription to theglobeandmail.com. And from Glacier Media, there'll be 2 winners accessible to an East Van Cross embroidered hooded sweatshirt and 2 winners for a BC Orcas hooded sweatshirt. Good luck to everyone who's here today. These are some great prizes and I hope that the winners severely enjoy them. With that, I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Nancy Love from the Globe and Mail Media Network to introduce our moderator today, Sean Stanley.
Thank you, Norm, and hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2022 Newspaper Day. I have the pleasure of introducing Sean Stanley. He is the head of Globe Content Studio, the content marketing division of the Globe and Mail. His team blends audience data with journalistic intuition and experience to craft great storytelling on behalf of brands, positioning them as thought leaders with influential audiences across multiple platforms. Sean's background is rooted in journalism, and he has held a number of senior editing roles at the Globe and Mail, as well as the Toronto Star, in disciplines that include small business, national, foreign, and local news and entertainment. He has a keen interest in entrepreneurship, hosting the podcast Industry Interrupted, co-founding a networking events business, co-chairing the Globe's Innovation Lab, and judging startup competitions. Please welcome Sean Stanley.
Thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you, Norm, as well. And thanks to all of you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here and to be celebrating Newspaper Day. Anytime we can celebrate newspapers is a great day. So I'm going to start just by introducing the other members of the panel who are going to be speaking with me today. The focus will be on visual storytelling. I'm going to start with Leah Bjordensen. So Leah is the executive producer for Western Canada for Content Works, which is Postmedia's award-winning full-service commercial studio. She leads a team of creatives in producing integrated, multi-platform content executions for clients, ranging from national brands to small local businesses and everything in between. Leah is a branded content expert with a proven track record of building and managing content teams. In previous roles, she's collaborated on content executions with Fortune 500 brands and premium digital publishers such as Apartment Therapy, Elle Canada, and New York Magazine. Her research into branded content during her time at Pressboard is widely shared, and she's contributed to setting standards for the industry. So hello, Leah, and thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Lucinda Choden. So Lucinda is former Senior Vice President Editorial of the Postmedia Network, previously overseeing the newsrooms of more than 120 brands across Canada. She also served as Editor-in-Chief of major newspapers in 3 Canadian provinces, the Montreal Gazette, the Edmonton Journal, and the Victoria Times Colonist. Lucinda's career has been characterized by a dedication to journalistic excellence, as well as a commitment to creating opportunities for the next generation, particularly women and members of racialized communities. She championed the creation of Postmedia's first diversity council and chaired the group until her retirement. Before becoming an editor, Lucinda was an arts reporter specializing in music journalism. Her writing has appeared in national and international publications, and she won a National Newspaper Award and an NNA Citation of Merit as a reporter. So Lucinda, hello, and thank you for being here. Next up, we have Colin Daker. Colin is the content manager for Kelowna-based Castanet News. He's responsible for directing news coverage of 4 newsrooms in the BC interior for one of Western Canada's most visited websites. Colin oversees all non-ad related content on the site. And before joining Castanet in 2017, he worked in radio news in Prince George, BC at CJCI and CIRX. Colin, welcome and thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Frank O'Connor. So Frank is currently the program coordinator of the photojournalism program at Loyalist College, Canada's only multi-year program that provides students with a triple threat skill set of still photography, writing, and multimedia. For the past 22 years, Frank has helped produce Loyalist graduates working as photojournalists, reporter photographers, multimedia producers and editors, picture and assignment editors, freelance photojournalists and photographers, and digital publishing specialists. That was my tongue-twisting paragraph for this afternoon. Frank's expertise is based on 23 years of experience as a newspaper and editorial photographer. He has always had an interest in professional development, having been president of the former Ontario News Photographers Association and founding president of the former Eastern Canadian News Photographers Association. Hello, Frank. Nice to have you here today. Next up, we have Cameron Tulk. So Cameron is the graphics editor at the Toronto Star. He's been part of the newspaper's graphics team since 2015, designing and coding data visualizations, interactives, and special digital features. Cameron's work at the Star has won or been nominated for numerous awards, including the 2019 National Newspaper Award in Presentation Design for the Undeniable series on the impacts of climate change across Canada. Okay, Cameron, thanks for being here. Good to see you. And finally, but not least, of course, we have Steve White. And Steve is the Executive Director of the News Photographers Association of Canada, a nonprofit organization that provides support, resources, and advocacy for working, retired, and student journalists and photojournalists. He's also the founding president of the News Foundation of Canada, a nonprofit that launches and supports community journalism in small, underserved communities across Canada at no cost to journalists. Steve was national photo editor for the Canadian Press for 15 years before leading the National Visuals Department for Sun Media, directing, supporting, and growing the photo and video departments at 84 daily and weekly publications from coast to coast. So as you've heard, a very esteemed panel. I am very much looking forward to this discussion. If you heard any whining in the background, that was just my dog who is dreaming in the table underneath me as we sit here today. Okay, so it's time to kick things off with the first question. Just as a reminder, the topic for today is the evolution of publisher journalism and visual storytelling. So this first question is sponsored by the Globe and Mail, one of my favorite news organizations within Canada, of course. And this is going to be a question for all of the panelists. And I will start, I think, with Leah, please. And the question is, has the pandemic spurred any changes to the design and visual presentation of news? So Leah, over to you to start, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sean. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, especially when it comes to the importance of substance over style. I think we're seeing major changes over the last few years to the presentation of news. And I think we all felt it a couple of years ago when the pandemic hit. Suddenly, content creators, late night anchors, reporters, everyone was working from home, which meant that the content couldn't be presented in the same high gloss, studio quality format it previously had been. So I think we all remember, Seth Meyers was suddenly in his in-laws' attic delivering the news, and people were having to create things with iPhones or even still like with whatever they had in their bedroom that is now their office, possibly forever. So as a result, we saw a lot of video content especially being presented that felt, I think, more personal, intimate, low res. And in my opinion, I think it also felt a lot more authentic. There's no camera tricks, studio lighting, just information and opinion. And this builds on a trend I think we've been seeing for years now, is this trend away from high production value content to more personal, low cost content that could just as effectively be shot on an iPhone as it could on a high quality video camera. So I think this also enables a democratization of news. Everyone can really make a shareable video these days that rivals the quality of what top publishers and producers are making themselves. And that comes with challenges for the news industry when audiences have to be more discerning in what they're trusting as their source of news if everything looks the same. So I think that's going to be a challenge, comes with pros and cons moving forward, but being able to tell the difference between those sources is going to be more important than ever moving forward.
Yeah, those are interesting points. And I'm glad you brought it up because it's something we talked about at the beginning of the pandemic, but over the past 2 years, it's become something that we're all so used to that we don't even think about it that much anymore. So Lucinda, over to you for some thoughts, please.
I absolutely agree with what Leah has said about, sort of the new cinema verite sort of approach to the presentation of news and the authenticity that lends to situations. I would also say that in terms of the kind of visual content that people are looking at, it's not just video, audio that has a sort of a more real set of production values and a more authentic approach. People are consuming visual content to a greater degree than they ever have in terms of sort of charts, graphs, people poring over things like death rates, hospitalization rates. We've known as journalists for a long time about the power of data-driven journalism, but I think that for the first time, audiences really saw how they could see in a much larger context at a glance what was really happening with the pandemic.
Yeah, now that we have less data at our disposal when it comes to the pandemic, you're actually seeing people complaining about not having enough access to data in a way that they probably never would have thought of previously. Okay,
I think
Colin.
that's
Yeah,
sorry,
sorry,
I was
go
just going to say that is an important societal shift, I think, and like the other, more content focused, less gloss. This is a positive development as well.
Absolutely. You know, it gets people thinking differently and consuming information differently. Absolutely. Okay, Colin, over to you, please.
Yeah, I agree with what Leah said a lot. In the day-to-day news grind, things haven't changed a ton, but there's a couple smaller examples. Early in the pandemic, it was a lot harder to get interview subjects on camera. It's pushed people to Zoom and FaceTime, and it's stuck. Like you watch a major, even a national newscast, it's full of Zoom interviews, and viewers became accustomed to what is, in a way, lower quality, less polished content pretty quickly. So, in a digital publishing context, it's really kind of lowered the bar for entry for creating video. It doesn't have to be polished stuff anymore. You take that interview that you're doing on Skype anyways, use it in parts of your story, even if it's not like a fully produced news pack. It doesn't take a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, and it's appreciated by some readers. I found, it's kind of in this kind of the same thing that happened to photojournalism in a lot of ways with the advent of smartphones with cameras. Good photography became nice, but not essential to some outlets. The work of a strong photojournalist can't really be replaced by reader-generated content or a reporter with an iPhone. The best camera is the one that you have with you at the time. So, we're seeing a lot of photography in our news. It's just not very good photography. The obvious one though too is, the news all of a sudden has to explain very complex health statistics in a digestible way. So like a graph, like the previous speaker said, people are looking over graphs, and so data journalism, it's and using images, it's kind of more important than ever.
Would you agree that we're starting to see a resurgence of photography though in newsrooms? Like I get the sense that a lot of them are using at the very least more freelance journalists as photographers now as a way to re-engage audiences in great news photography, which is not something that's easily replicated on a phone.
Yeah, for sure. Newsrooms, I think themselves, they obviously see the value in it. It's often, especially with the smaller newsroom, the smaller papers, it ends up becoming like a bottom line issue. If the newsroom can't afford it, most editors would love to have great photojournalism. So if they can afford it, yeah, they do it.
Loving the background there too, by the way. I'm assuming that's your podcast studio. Looking good.
Yeah, no, it's our sound booth here.
Cool. Okay, Frank, over to you.
Well, I agree with some of the things that have been said, but some other things, I think it's very true that production value demands have dropped, and in a way that has made things more accessible. But I would say from a photojournalism standpoint, photojournalism by definition is a mission of presence. You need to be there. You can't Skype it, Zoom it, whatever it is. And that became a challenge over the 2 years, not just for the students that we teach, particularly the students we teach, because they weren't ready yet to navigate the alternatives. But even for, graduates and professionals working in the field, it became this, I think, the COVID shrug, as we all know, that every facet of the world has used COVID as an excuse for mediocrity. And the problem is that 2 years plus hence, many people now mediocrity has been normalized. And it's become, unfortunately, for some people, that's the best they have. because they've lost sight of excellence. So I think the challenge coming out of COVID is to kind of reevaluate what excellence is. What do we really want to be, and how are we going to get there? And in the photojournalism world, it's been a challenge, and it's one more continuing challenge that faces the craft. So COVID is something that we've all faced, but I think my concern is that the negative effects of it have been somewhat normalized, and we need to be really mindful of that.
I've been around the sun a few times, and I remember graduating from journalism school and being told by a lot of my instructors that there were no jobs in journalism. Good luck, you'll probably be a freelancer. I'd be interested in your perspective around photojournalism, because we've just been talking about how that is a challenging area where newspapers and media organizations generally have actually been decreasing resources. So what is the mood among photojournalism students these days? Like, do they feel like this is a viable career option to them? How are you signaling to them the ways in which they can participate in this industry?
Well, it's funny. Some of that I was prepared in the answer to the next question, but I'm glad you brought it up, because there is a pessimism, and that's the latest in a series of dominoes that I was going to say later on, of things that have happened, and there is a pessimism, and it has a negative effect. How do you make a viable career out of that? There's a lot of pessimism amongst students. We've always talked about the skill set that we teach. We tell students this is the best job in the world. If you can find a way to work kind of, in journalism, visual or otherwise, that it is the best job in the world. And studying it, you learn how you interface with that world, and you learn a lot about yourself. So from that standpoint, the skills are sought after still, and they're transferable to a lot of other areas. But we want to remember that we need to teach the future young journalists of the world who are going to become the older journalists of the world. And, will one day be on panels like this, and we need to make sure that there's a future for them, and so that they can go out and, find good housing and have a good job and do all the things that, that we hope to do. So but to answer your question, yeah, there is a pessimism, and yet we've always told students, and it's always true, if you're eager and you're skilled and you're mobile and you're hungry, you will find work. But it certainly is a challenge, and there's some more things that I'll talk about later. But yeah.
Great, thank you very much. And Cameron.
Yeah, other than election results, I can't think of a topic where data and data visualization has played a more prominent role than COVID. You can't really tell the story of the pandemic without talking about that data. The kind of rising and falling case curves became shorthand for our experiences over the last 2 years, at least when we had the data for case counts. At the beginning of each wave and the rising kind of worry that comes with that, and then kind of the ebbing of each wave and the kind of relaxation, at least for a small amount of time before the next one. And like news sites were creating dashboards to track daily pandemic indicators. And those pages probably looked more like something you'd see on Google Analytics than on the news story, but they still really resonated with audiences, I think. And then there was also important but pretty abstract concepts to explain to readers that really benefited from graphic treatment. So how air moves around a room or a subway car or an airplane cabin, why ventilation matters, simulations about how a virus would move through a population, explaining exponential growth, the science of how vaccinations work or the virus itself. So some of these stories had very sophisticated visual treatments, and the New York Times had one where you could actually travel through a mask to explain how the mask works, following the particles as they get trapped by the threads of the fabric. And then some of them had more simpler treatments. I mean, the Washington Post, I think at the time, one of the most popular articles they ever published at their website just featured two-dimensional dots bouncing around a square. But that really explained exponential growth and how it flattened the curve very effectively. So I think that there was a lot of concepts that really benefited from graphic and visual treatments over this time. And I think it would have been a lot of that kind of understanding would have been lost if we were relying entirely on just written word and photos.
Yeah, I think that would explain the rise in explainer videos as well as a phenomenon. Same kind of deal. Do you still feel the, kind of push and pull between digital and print? In other words, like, do you think digital first or print first because you're trying to adapt the same, complicated concepts to two pretty different mediums because one's static and one isn't? So how do you deal with that challenge?
Yeah, so we kind of approached it digitally first, building out kind of complex interactives where you can really delve into the data. And then for print, we tried to kind of simplify things, just give you the high level numbers. It was very difficult to actually reproduce those kind of complex graphics and case curves on a daily basis for print. So we would throw to the more complex graphics of QR codes. And that was kind of the solution that we had come up with for that problem.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Good idea. Okay, Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with sort of everybody's own perspective. Design and visual presentations, not as much the area that I focus on in supporting visual journalists, sort of front row or front line. But yeah, I mean, we always struggle as visual journalists in showcasing and illustrating the news in ever increasing visually stimulating ways. And as sort of mentioned, you do have struggles with just bare streets and empty streets. So how do you represent that? How do you illustrate that? So the challenge we found more was just how do you get access to things? How do you put yourself in a position safely, especially where you're illustrating this on a daily basis? So you would, the first little bit you would see the roped off playgrounds and things like that. And after that, we sort of were struggling just to find ways to illustrate that. So we were just gathering the news and gathering the visuals. That's where our struggles were. It wasn't as much of the presentation. We would sort of take that content and pass it along to those who sort of had those challenges. So it was something that we had to deal with, but it's not any different than we had to illustrate SARS, back when that hit us. And how do you illustrate health? So, it was an exercise in creativity and struggle and overcoming. But really, a lot of our struggles is really just dealing with being a front line, dealing with the health issues of that, and the mental health aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and I suppose there's that fear aspect too, especially in the initial stages of sending people out who actually didn't necessarily want to go, right? Because they were worried about themselves, almost like war zone treatment.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, but then that's something that we've had to deal with. We do send people off to war, and you do sort of stay up at night thinking of that. You're not only thinking of them, you're thinking of their they just had a baby or their family, and it becomes the ripple effect of the stress. It's one thing for us to sort of sit in a newsroom and send people off, sit at home in our home newsrooms and send people off, but to send people out front line to sort of illustrate this and mask up and get into hospitals when possible, it was like I said, the mental health that attacks everybody in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. The next question is sponsored by News Media Canada. We're going to start with you on this one, Lucinda, and then ask Colin about this as well. Does visual storytelling boost the trust and credibility of news? And if so, how? So Lucinda, over to you, please.
Well, I think the answer is definitely yes. And I can't think of a better example than Russia's invasion of the Ukraine at the end of February. The sense of having a war in Europe for the first time since the Second World War, a major war, was really brought home to millions of viewers. And I think the reality of the situation that people got looking at the bombed out cities, the bodies of civilians with their hands bound behind their backs at Bucha, I mean, that has made this conflict into something that's much larger and more terrifying to people who are watching it on their televisions or looking at photographs and online or in printed publications. And I actually have a 2-paragraph quote that I'd like to read. It's from 2 photojournalists from the Associated Press who are in the city of Mariupol in Ukraine. This is, his name is Mitslav Chernov at the Associated Press. This is what he said when they finally left Mariupol. The Russians were hunting us down. They had a list of names, including ours, and they were closing in. We were the only international journalists left in Mariupol. We had been documenting its siege by Russian troops for more than 2 weeks. We were reporting inside the hospital when gunmen began stalking the corridors. These gunmen were actually Ukrainian soldiers, and they were sent to get them out. But I mean, what more powerful testament to the fact that, I mean, Russian soldiers had specifically been ordered to find these guys and eliminate them, because their evidence of what was really going on was so compelling and so powerful that the only thing to do would be to shut them down. So I think, news photography and the power of that is not new. People who were, a lot of people around the world learned about what was really happening under the Nazis when they saw the American liberation, the photos from the American liberation of Buchenwald death camp. But I think it's really gone to a new level at this point. And absolutely, it's impossible not to be frightened and horrified by the bodies of those civilians.
Well, I always say journalists are at their best in times of crises, and those are some powerful words, and illustrate that point, and also the bravery that goes with journalism, especially in crisis zones like that, but also even, as we pointed out, in times of great trouble for our country. And the pandemic has been trouble for pretty much everybody across the globe. Colin, how about you? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. I mean, placing your reporter at the scene of the event is big for readers. Photo, video, they're still viewed as mostly unbiased to readers. I have another example. Throughout the Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa, I'm sure anyone working in a newsroom in Canada heard similar feedback and complaints, and that's being like, I'm watching these live streams on YouTube and they do not match what I'm seeing in the coverage. Now, like either way, these people, they're trusting a random video on the internet over words published by like credible, established news sites. I mean, that's a problem, but I mean, we can harness it for our own credibility. I find like with any controversial story, if you get sources on camera, you're far less likely to get complaints, skepticism directed at the newsroom itself. Viewers, they see the words coming out of the source's mouth and they go, this is one person's story or point of view. And they're rather than thinking, oh, this news outlet, they're trying to spin me or something. Ultimately, though, I mean, anything we can do to help a reader understand a story is going to increase credibility, even if it's just a graph attached to a COVID story. I mean, I think if readers feel like they're learning something, they're going to trust you more inherently. Journalists, I think we are ultimately educators in a way. And I think the number, it's 65% of the population are visual learners. So using visuals, it's ultimately going to help many readers understand your story a lot better. You do have to use those tools appropriately, though. I mean, you can't just cram them into anything like a court story or something. It's not going to help anything. It's going to kind of just be a waste of time. Another example, I mean, out in the BC interior, we've had to do a lot of disaster reporting the last few years, unfortunately. And I think it goes without saying, like using images and videos of like these scenes, catastrophic scenes, they obviously carry much more weight than just words. I mean, capturing those scenes of people packing their home, they're evacuating. You can't replace it with words. You just can't. I mean, the other thing, I mean, surveys, they give different answers what kind of like news Canadians find most credible. I know News Media Canada, their recent study, they found newspaper websites the most trusted. That's fantastic. But that same study showed that 47% of Canadians found TV the most trusted, which is still a very big number. So, I mean, different people trust different mediums, and in a digital like publishing context, we can do both. So, I mean, why not do both, right?
Yeah, digital allows you to do everything. really,
Yeah,
ultimately,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and those are all interesting points. And I think when there's an ongoing story like the pandemic or Ukraine, there is a tendency for a news organization to assume a level of knowledge that isn't necessarily there, especially with younger readers. So again, highlighting the importance of that explainer content that we've been talking about, so that people get a better understanding of what has come before and not necessarily just what is happening at the current moment.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next question is sponsored by Torstar. We're going to start with Cameron on this one, and we're going to ask Leah for her thoughts as well. How is visual storytelling being used to inspire deep consumer connections? And that's specifically with news media brands. And how does it differ from other forms of storytelling like articles or infographics? So Cameron, over to you to start, please.
Yeah, so visual storytelling, I think, encompasses a lot of different things, photos, videos, graphics, design, and I would actually include infographics in visual storytelling. I'm biased, I'm a graphics editor, of course, but you can create a story that also uses all of those things together to kind of create a more meaningful package for your readers. So when we talk about how it's different from an article, I don't see it as an either or thing. For example, like if you have an article about a hot housing market, and you might interview a prospective buyer who's feeling the crunch of that. But you could also include a graphic that just specifies where the housing price has gone over the last X number of years, and give context and meaning to their stress. That shows you just how much it's gone up recently. So we published an article in Toronto Star that was all about the excuse me, all about fires in high rises. And so part of that was just explaining the science of how wind blowing through a high rise will affect how a fire moves through a building. So to help tell that, we created a 3D model of the floor of the building and diagrammed how wind affects the fire. So that was just one part of that larger story that had, you know, traditional article elements, interviews, and so on, mostly text. But I think that for that section, that graphic and that visuals really helped tell that part of the story. And then for something more visual, say if you have a larger data set, you could write a data story where a graphic is front and center, includes more detail. Maybe it breaks down data for different parts of the country. If you want to go back to the example of housing prices, maybe uses scrollytelling to explain some nuances of the data at different points in time. This is the kind of thing that you'd see in features on like the Upshot from the New York Times or 538 or the Pudding. And that's all kind of visual storytelling. And a given story might lend itself to one technique over another. So if a story is centered around a video, be it a video of a police shooting or a violent protest, then maybe the entire story should be a video and not written at all. Or if you're trying to explain how the virus moves through a space, then certainly a graphic should be front and center to that storytelling. In terms of how you kind of connect to the audience, I see kind of two major advantages. First, when it comes to social, you can meet your audience where they are. For each platform, you might tell the story a little bit differently. An Instagram post might be a photocentric slideshow. A TikTok video might be a rawer design, more personality driven, where a journalist talks directly to the audience. I think each platform has its own style. And then the second advantage in terms of connecting to your audience is that you can break out of the typical article template. So I think everyone is very familiar with what an article looks like online, but the more you can kind of break out of that with some design elements, the more you can kind of create a wow factor, something kind of like professionalism that comes with that story. So for example, we had published a story about the Marineland, the last orca that was captive at Marineland on the Star. And we had really tried to make the art direction match the themes of the story, kind of giving it a moodier mood using colors and fonts and so on. And I think that that kind of gets noticed by your audiences when you try something different. And certainly when you have a paywall as part of your business plan, hopefully that can help.
You know, it's interesting, you've highlighted two things that I think are important. And One is just the multitude of options that are available. So not just on your own owned and operated, but off platform as well, and grappling with where the right place is and when the right time is to unveil all of those various elements is one of the more challenging parts of the job. But it's also that the medium in which you work, or the mediums in which you work, are journalism in and of themselves. So you've got to figure out, for example, how to build that 3D model of the apartment building. And you've got to figure out where you're going to get that information, how you're going to source it, and then how you're going to develop it. Maybe it'd be interesting just to take a minute to talk about how your team operates under those circumstances. Like, how do you do the journalism that goes along with that visual storytelling?
Yeah, it's tricky because every story is different. So it really is a bespoke approach. In terms of how you build like a 3D model, you just want to make sure that everything is right. So you're not just making anything up just because you can kind of abstract things, graphics. So in this case, we had to track down a floor plan for the building in question and then use that as the model to kind of recreate it. And then the designer worked very closely with the reporter, who had of course visited and talked to the people involved in the story just to make sure that all the details were right. And that's kind of just how we approach that individual example.
Great, thank you. So Leah, a question for you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think it's important what Cameron said about creating content for so many different mediums out there and making sure that you're not just kind of copy pasting things on the platform, but making sure that it's relevant to the mindset of people who are engaging with it on whatever platform they choose to. But I think no matter where the content is being published, in order to create that deep connection with your audience, your readers or your viewers need to see themselves reflected in the content that you create. And I think there's a few ways of approaching that. So the reason for this is there's so much noise on social media. There's so much content out there. We're all scrolling our feeds. How do you choose the thing to stop on, click, and read? It's hyper competitive. So a reader or a viewer is naturally going to choose something to engage with that they think is most relevant to their life, their interests, their needs. So with visual content, I think you have the opportunity to immediately send cues to your audience that content is relevant to them. In an article, maybe it's a headline, maybe you need to get someone onto the page before they fully understand exactly who the article is for. But with video or images, you can communicate that quite instantly. So you see someone who looks like you in a feature image, or you see a landscape that looks similar to your backyard or somewhere you grew up. You see a family or someone in a life stage that's similar to you. You see someone trying to buy a house. Those images contain so much context for explaining or for connecting to an audience and saying, this is going to help you. This is going to give you info that makes your life better, or explain something that you're frustrated by. And I think like you consider TikTok right now, like everyone's talking about TikTok. Why? The algorithm feeds us content that is hyper targeted to our interests. I think people, if you're on TikTok, I'm on TikTok way too much. It feels like TikTok is reading our minds. And for news organizations to be able to compete with that kind of an algorithm, you need to make content that feels hyper targeted to people. So reflecting their interests, desires, and their personalities, frankly, through visual content becomes really important. And an example of this at Postmedia, for Content Works, we've been creating like personality-based quizzes. I think BuzzFeed really nailed this years ago, where you take a quiz and you are delivered content at the end that relates to all your answers you've made. So whether you are a young person who's interested in food and wants to travel to Italy, whatever resulting article or infographic or video that you're served really relates to your interests. And we're trying to do this as well with quiz-based content, with images to guide people to content that is best suited to them. I think another point on this that I just want to express too is it further emphasizes the need to feature diverse faces and bodies in imagery, as well as diverse lifestyles. So, I mean, if your media is full of like people are mean to old white guys, but if your content is full of old white guy faces, you're going to miss out on speaking to a lot of people who don't necessarily connect with that demographic or who don't see themselves reflected in that. So, and it doesn't just apply to visuals. If you're doing a podcast, you know, are the reporters or presenters speaking informally? Are they speaking formally? Who are you trying to talk to, and what medium? And I think when you take it beyond the written form and you go into podcasts, video, images, quizzes, infographics, you unlock all of these ways to connect with someone immediately that you didn't necessarily have with article content.
It's the inherent like push and pull of the news business, right? Because news is designed for everyone. It's not designed actually, you know, at its core to be personal, but now we're trying to bolt on personal elements to a broad-based business. And, you know, I think it's a challenge. I like to call it like the Wheaties content, where it's like you're serving that up because it's content that's good for the audience. It's things that you think the audience should know. And then there's everything else. And, you know, you want to be able to sort of cherry pick the things that matter most to you. And this is where things like AI and machine learning start to come into play as well. So all good points. And I think it's probably like a bit of a middle stage that we're at right now, is trying to like figure out how to find that balance between broad-based and personalized. I don't know if you have some thoughts around that, but it would be interesting to hear from you on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And my world is definitely more branded content, brand journalism, and storytelling. So we want to tell a specific story to as many people as possible who are interested in that story. But I think I'm sure other faces and names on this call would be better than me at talking about the challenges that presents to journalism and making sure you're presenting impartial information in the best way that can connect with everyone.
Yeah, marketing, of course, is much more targeted than the news business is, for sure, even though the two are intertwined now. Okay, the next question is sponsored by Postmedia. First, Lucinda, over to you with this, which is, how has photojournalism in newspapers evolved, and how has its impact translated to the digital world?
Well, I'll spare everyone a short history of black and white to color to video. But what I would say a little bit further to what Leah was talking about is that I think what we've seen recently is newspapers and news organizations understanding that in the old top-down hierarchical format that we used to use, or approach we used to use, here's what we think is important, and you should enjoy it. Now we really see that people are interested in content, but we have to go where they are. Hence, you know, many publications. I looked up how many followers the New York Times has on Instagram. 15 million. Ottawa Citizen, Montreal Gazette, Toronto Star, all have significant audiences on Instagram. I think when we're talking about sort of the push and pull of personalization and news for me versus news people should care about, it's a lot easier with content streams. So a lot of news organizations have said, okay, we're going to break out a special content stream around real estate, using cookies, or in the post-cookie universe, other means of understanding the audience, artificial intelligence, and serving them that kind of content. It's less obvious really how you're going to get news to a personalized news feed to people who say, you know, I don't want to hear about the war in Ukraine, or I don't want to hear about January 6th anymore. I'm sick of it. If I wanted to watch more about that Capitol thing, I would be watching CNN. But, you know, so I think that is both the opportunity and the opportunity for news organizations is meeting people where they are, especially young audiences, and understanding that they want to consume visual content, how to reach them when it isn't something that they have chosen to look into. Steve might have ideas about that part.
Steve, you're free to chime in if you want to say anything.
Yeah, is this my prompt to jump into my answer?
Sure.
Yeah, I think, I mean, photojournalism, we've been seeing it evolve for 60 years. Like, it evolved from film to also, where we're at. The biggest evolution really has been the direct collision between revenue and speed. So we're at a place where, with newspapers needing to evolve into digital, you need the speed. You need to move quick. You have to have content up quickly. But we also, I mean, I've lived through free falling revenue from probably day one in the industry. So we're constantly seeing revenue drop, and the visuals have many places been the top place to do the cuts, because the line item is just one of the highest for many publications. So we sort of hit a point where we're asked to do much more with much less. And so the struggle with that is, how do you adjust? And many newspapers have taken the step to cutting full-time staff, visual journalists, and have offloaded those tasks to either reporters, or they've eased up their own priorities, I guess, in some ways. So we're seeing a lot more things like handout photos being used. So organizations or companies will provide content. We're seeing more stock imagery used, both editorial stock and just sort of generic stock, because it is something you can grab quickly. And so handout photos, journalist created content has been sort of where we sort of ended up in many ways, which does sort of hurt the end product. So that's kind of the major impact. How we recover from that and get back on track, I think, is something that we've been sort of struggling working with. Sort of one of the observations we find is we're at a time where visual storytelling is at its most impactful. We see where Instagram, which is a visual platform for the most part, that's where it's a significant opportunity to tell your story in using visuals at a time where, like I said, a lot of places are cutting back on it. So it is tough. It's the cost involved is high. So one of the observations that I've sort of been seeing is, because technology the cost of technology has dropped in many ways. So it is cheaper. You can have iPhones that take fantastic photos. So you do see more citizen type journalists out there. We sort of brought up earlier the truck convoy, and the public themselves were sort of trying to tell their own stories, the protesters themselves telling their own stories. So what I see, one of the challenges with the evolution and sort of collision of digital, is that newspapers are not only struggling to win over readers, but they're also competing with them in many ways. So you do see publications trying to win over their audience while selling to them. They're trying to get them as subscribers and following them, but they're also competing with them on Instagram and on a lot of the social media platforms for eyes. So it's a challenging point to try to win over your customer when you're also competing with them on many of the same platforms. So it's definitely an interesting time, and the quality is kind of what is going to be the only thing that wins you over. And so we really need to push to see more resources put back into proper visually storytelling. We're starting to see in many ways, but we have a long way to go before we sort of get back to where we were.
Yeah, there is that thread, though, of the quality piece that has been, kind of rolling all the way through this conversation. And I think it leads nicely into the next question, which is sponsored by Quebecor. And we're going to start with Frank on this one, please. So in an era of the loosely defined term fake news, which we are all, of course, familiar with for all kinds of reasons, and the ability to create actual fakes using digital technology, what has been the impact, Frank, on visual storytelling and other forms of storytelling?
Apologies. I really want to pick up on something that Steve was talking about, and for our viewers, maybe a little bit of a quick a quick little history lesson, but I'm not so worried about fake news now. Fake news has always been there. People have always told visual lies, going back to the dawn of photography, the, manipulations, and they're shockingly good now. But just in the essence of time, I'm going to read from this piece just so I don't get off on a tangent. And so allow me. Digital technology has certainly offered those who wish to tell visual lies many more tools and techniques to do so. Some are frighteningly easily used and difficult to detect. And Photoshop's not the only game in town anymore. There's all kinds of multimedia fakery going on. However, I don't think that's really what digital technology has done to assist in fake news is as dangerous as what it has done to cause no news. And that's where I want to pick up on what Steve was saying. And by that, I mean to say that digital technology that really came on like gangbusters way back in the 90s. And I've been fortunate enough to see the halcyon days and the swift change over to digital. And it started a revolution. So from a photo standpoint, initially saved a lot of money. If you can imagine being a manager and having all these costs just go away, but it was a one-time saving really. So that was the first domino that was kicked over. And however, the dominoes continued to be knocked over. Big revenue generating things like classified ads and real estate. And those of you that were, around in the early days of the internet will remember, they were slowly lost to the developing internet. The next domino was the aggregators of the share economy who didn't seem to respect copyright or listen to the toothless enforcement of weak laws. Fast forward to the next series of dominoes, they quickly felled photo staffs across the land. Good quality photojournalism became too expensive for many. Staff jobs disappeared through attrition, layoffs, freelance assignments shrank, day rates stagnated. Award-winning Canadian photojournalists struggle just to get enough editorial work to stay afloat, and they still do. I know of lots of grads, NNA award winners among them, World Press Award winners, grads of ours that are struggling, right? So we should not worry so much about fake news as we should worry, I think, about no news. Mark Zuckerberg will never assign a photo feature about the heroes or villains in our communities, right? He'll never initiate coverage of a contentious issue at City Hall. Once proud news organizations, locally here, the Kingston Whig Standard, Belleville Intelligencer, they no longer even have offices. They're dedicated staff working from their home offices and kitchen tables, right, to carry the news. Now that sounds kind of doom and gloom, but I want to make sure that people know what's at stake for our democracy if we don't work hard as individuals and collectively to make strong visual journalism a viable, sustainable part of the future. I got off on a tangent again. So, we're even seeing it now at the college that I teach at. The parents of college-bound students don't see a future necessary full of good paying jobs in journalism, although there are jobs there. They're not in the traditional places. They're not arrived at it the traditional way. But, perception is reality for a lot of people. And in our business, we need to make sure that people understand that, we need those talented visual storytellers and there's a place for them. And they have to be convinced that there's a place for them, right? So, our enrollment's been trending downward since 2014. And we're approaching unsustainable levels. So we're actively, actually, believe it or not, switching to a postgrad program to refocus on a different strategy. And that's, that program's that we're a part of, it's been around for 35 years. So, there's always going to be photojournalism, and when there are wars and big stories, people gravitate to them. They will always get told. And I don't worry so much about the big stories, but what I worry about is the community stories, the journalism the visual journalism that won't get done, things that won't happen locally, politicians locally that don't get, covered properly. So, passion will always keep photojournalism there, right? And you'll always see memorable things because there are passionate people who go into harm's way and make the sacrifices to produce these stories, but passion needs payment, right? And, passion will keep the craft alive, but payment keeps the profession alive. And that's really important to remember. I know so many grads who are not doing well, who used to have a real viable career. And again, not to sound negative, but I advocate for them. I advocate for strong visual journalism, because whatever role we are in newspapers, and it's the best job in the world. If you've been a part of the newspaper family, there's nothing better than that, right? There's people I worked with 30 years ago. We still have an instant connection when we meet again, right? But it is the best job in the world, but we can't take it for granted. And we have to remember that, if we want to have strong democracy, that what's going on in Ukraine is what happens in our communities. They're connected, right? They're connected because people take advantage of vacuums. They take advantage of agendas. They take advantage of things. So we need to know our role in this. That to be a strong visual journalist, it's something that is hugely important to all of us. And I don't want to worry about fake news so much now, as we need to really worry about no news, because no news creates a vacuum, and news being properly, vetted, edited, and produced and disseminated, that tells the truth. Whether or not people challenge it is whatever, but it's, if we don't have that, then what takes its place? And it takes its place easily with the tools today and with the platforms today. It's very easy. All we need to do is look at what's happened in our own country and to the south of us over the last 5 years, right? So anyway.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, that covered a lot of ground. Anything you would want to add to that?
Yeah, as always, it sucks going after Frank. No, I mean, and I do echo a lot of what he says. And it's, it's seen his passion always reignites the fire with me. And Frank's been an inspiration for me for decades. So I do agree that fake news has been around for a long time. I mean, I remember talking about photoshopping baseballs into photos and literally clipping out and seeing people cut out baseballs out of the negatives and making prints off that. And it's always been there. We've always had the ability, to lie through visuals. And we need people in the industry that will carry the torch and slap wrists and hands when that happens. I really don't think we've seen an event happen yet. I think it's coming, where fake news really makes the earth rocking impact, right? I think, potentially, some world power is going to manufacture some sort of event that will have a ripple effect around the world. We're not there yet. I don't think that's anything that we can really deal with. That's a whole other sort of topic. Around the sort of the fake news, I think my concern really has been more of just the public's acceptance with some of the stuff. I'm a little bit more concerned when, as we go to sort of scroll through content coming from 1,000 different sources, that the public, that I sort of see, I mean, newspapers have a little bit of a different direct connection with readers than I do, but from being out in the waters with the readers, is we'll see something like the Oscars being an example, where after the Will Smith slap, within a couple hours, somebody put out a post, like, it was basically headshots of celebrities out in the crowd. And they'd said, here's all the celebrities' responses to the slap. And then I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, there was a story came out, oh, by the way, that wasn't real. Those were just headshots taken from they were just good reactions or expressive reactions from celebrities from previous years. That wasn't even real. And a decade ago, the outcry over any publication running that and not putting out, extensive corrections and apologizing, people would have been put on alert, like, you now work out of a broom closet, and your pension's at stake. Don't ever do that again. The public, would step up and scream about that. Maybe not 10 years ago, but it's a number of years ago. But really, there was no sort of, that I saw, any response to that. I think the public, in many ways, is just used to a TikTok and scrolling and kind of a lot of, mixed messages, and there wasn't a much, backlash over that. And I found that horrifying, that we're getting to a point where people are just like, that's, and then just sort of swipe on to the next story. It's very scary. And like Frank had said, that's sort of where the vacuum comes in, where there are organizations, there are companies and world powers that will take advantage of that complacency. and that's more of my fear, not necessarily the people who can create it, is more of the world's response, the public's response to having it happen to them and not being horrified themselves. So.
Okay, between the two of you, that was a good, thorough answer. So thank you. The next question is sponsored by Glacier Media. Colin, we're going to start with you on this one, please. Is there a risk that audiences will scan highly visual formats rather than immersing themselves in the content? In other words, do they get lost sometimes in the design without actually taking in the information that is part of it? And do you have any data points to maybe, cite sort of one way or the other how effective or ineffective that may be?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this, and I gotta say, I don't think so. I mean, I think if somebody is going to, like a reader is going to just scroll through a photo essay really quickly and trying to just skim at the photos, I'm not sure that those readers would have actually stuck around to read like a written piece on it. We're like bombarded with so much news from all over the world. It's like an overload, and you have to expect that your readers are going to be skimming an awful lot of, I would say most of what you're putting out, they're going to skim it unless, I don't know, they're particularly engaged with it. There is a good chance though, I'd say that like they're not going to engage with the content at all. I mean, I know for Castanet, for example, for every 10 people that read a story, just one person will watch the associated video if it's kind of an identical, like a couple, like the same story. So, I mean, going into like video, I guess specifically, shouldn't really be an all-out strategy, shouldn't be the big pivot to video, because I mean, rather than just something that kind of complements, rounds out your content. Yeah, but like I said, I mean, people aren't gonna stick around and read 1,000 words if they're not even gonna look at a photo essay, right?
And Frank, what do you think? Any perspective on this?
Well, I mean, going back to, what we're saying about COVID, and I think, it's changed a lot of things that have become normalized with the evolution of, looking at imagery on quick hit social media. I mean, there are, as you were saying, it's unlikely that people are going to spend a lot of time, but we are now device dependent on looking at visual storytelling. It's templated to a large degree. I mean, how many times do you go to a splash page and, God forbid, see anything other than an aspect ratio that's identical to every other website's? So, and people have become okay with that. They just don't know any better. I mean, I love it when people try and cover basketball games, in horizontal format, landscape format. Last time I knew, human beings who play basketball are fairly tall and possibly could be best served in a vertical format, but no, that's not the way we do them now. It has to be horizontal. So there's a lot of, we've been trained, unfortunately, trained badly sometimes, both as producers of content and as consumers of content, because that's the way we do it, right? So, I used to love, and again, I don't mean to sound like curmudgeon, but I loved the option of looking at images when I could use my deviceless brain and eyes to travel around a presentation of images. But I've had that taken from me now by the format of media. And so I wonder if there's not a way for us to leverage some of that, which makes us better and do things differently. But yeah, I know we're all very dependent on how we, how we fit into, as Steve was saying, alluding to earlier, that everything has to be done fast, right? Everything's been plugged in, it's templated, there's no time. And so to tell a visual story, I mean, it's not our story, right? It's somebody else's story. It's the subject story. We might guide the narrative, the viewer, but it's somebody else's story. So how best do we do that? And visually, I mean, one of the things that we try and get into our students is to understand, well, what are my resources? What methodology do I need? How much time do I need? Is it a frozen in moment time, or is it time expanded? Do we need still photography, or do we need, multimedia? Do we need words? Do we need, ambient sound and voice, and all those things are considering in how we storytell. But my concern sometimes is that we get a little bit too caught up in the templated world that we're in. And it's all well and good to sit here and say that when you've got somebody breathing down your neck, and but yeah, I think we just sometimes need to stop and look at what we're doing and really question, are we doing it properly visually? Is there a way that we can improve on it? Excellence is, if we want to grow trust, and the only way I know to grow trust is to recognize excellence so that it becomes your commodity more than anything else. If people trust you, right? And if you have excellence and trust, I don't think you have to work as hard at getting viewers and readers and followers. You become, certainly the prominent organizations that probably we all follow have that, as part of their DNA, right? That's who they are. And I don't think the public is any different in that way. They're going to recognize, there's always people that live in an echo chamber and have an agenda and so on. But I think for the most part, that's the key to our future is excellence. And excellence is arrived at by doing all the things that we were talking about earlier.
Well, talk of the future brings us very nicely into our final question, which is sponsored by Kinetic. And Cameron, we're going to start with you on this one. So let's talk now then about the trends that you're seeing as the next evolution in visual storytelling. And so I'd wonder about how things like social media and probably TikTok in particular are kind of redefining those approaches.
So I guess I could just say that don't want to oversell any timelines because things can move very slowly in Canadian media. So I'm kind of skeptical when someone talks about the next big thing being A, B, or C. And the kind of visual journalism that I've been talking about, be it interactive graphics or art-directed features, is still just a very small slice of the overall content pie. But my hope would be that as we go along, you'll see that slice will get just a little bit bigger, and you're going to see more and more of it. Certainly big US newspapers are dabbling in kind of the buzzier things, be it AR, augmented reality, or VR. But I feel like the results are so far mixed. Those things are still too early to kind of say how they can be applied to the news in an effective manner. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens on those approaches. In terms of social media and TikTok, I think that it's not my department, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but there's always going to be a bit of a tension if you have a paywall as part of your business plan between creating content specifically for a social media platform versus trying to drive readers to your platforms where you can hopefully convert them into revenue. So maybe that'll be figured out more in the future, but I think that as long as that tension exists, you might see less emphasis placed on kind of truly creating social content that kind of stands on its own as its own form of visual storytelling. That said, that we are certainly active on all those platforms. So we're just kind of figuring it out as we go, I think.
Well,
yeah, so less next big thing and more slow spread, baby steps.
Fair. Well, as soon as you had mentioned social media, I saw a smile on Leah's face, so I'm going to have her take us home. I know she wants to talk about video and a few other things, and that would certainly apply to social media and TikTok and a few others. So Leah, over to you to take us home before I turn things back to Norm.
Sure, sounds good, and I'll try to keep it brief here. So I think I might be repeating myself a little bit, but I turn to what social media looks like right now to try to extrapolate, well, where will news organizations follow? And I think we see that Instagram Reels, TikToks filmed in someone's bedroom can rack up hundreds of thousands of views, as long as they're speaking to something that people can relate to and care about. And even better if the person telling the story has a unique point of view or a personal brand that someone can connect to. So I think going back to your question earlier, Sean, what's the balance? How do we find the balance between social media virality without authority and telling a story as professionals and journalists? And I think the balance is to harness trends that are succeeding on social media to get the right stories in front of the right audience. So one thing that's really stands out to me is that there are some professional journalists and storytellers who are telling their stories that matter to them, and using their personal brand to get those across. So I think of like Claire Saffitz at Bon Appetit or Melissa Clark from New York Times Cooking. Clearly, I follow a lot of food publications, but their brand and their personal accounts are just as important in terms of driving traffic to their websites as the power of the organization behind them. And I think we see similar successes from the team at BlogTO on their social media. They have their journalists front and center in the content. They're talking about things they love, they care about. It's their faces and opinions being represented, but with the power and credibility of their news organization behind them. So I think more news organizations, TV shows, brands are showing us behind the scenes. They're putting faces to their reporters and journalists, and they're showing more personality. And I think, that's, again, the challenge of balance there. It can't just be all personality driven and all buzzworthy, but how do you balance telling stories in ways people care about right now and are used to relating to on social media with the importance of telling the right stories? And I think we're going to see that branding expand. And I think we will see the brands who successfully get their people and their faces out there are going to continue to succeed. And the ones that don't may fall behind, because I think at the end of the day, like, people connect with people. And that's something that we're trying to do in our content too.
Okay, so that was a all-encompassing, very interesting discussion with lots of really excellent points made. And I just want to make sure that I thank all of the terrific panelists that were here with us today. So thank you to Leah and Lucinda and Colin, and I'm looking at my list because I don't want to forget anybody, Frank and Cameron and Steve for joining us today and giving us a whole bunch of their valuable time. I want to thank all the audience out there who joined us for this discussion, and I hope you all found it valuable. And with that, I am going to hand the baton back to Norm to carry us home before we round things up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sean. To the panelists, absolutely fantastic job. Thank you so much for your time, your insights, your knowledge, your background. Just a great hour that we spent in a really critical discussion today. And Sean, just a fantastic job guiding us through today. Thank you so much. Really a great event, and a really great event is really led by a great moderator. So thank you so much for taking us through today and interacting with us and spending time with us. So thank you so much. We're on the home stretch. I just wanted to take a moment to again thank our sponsors for today's event: the Globe and Mail Media Group, Torstar, Vividata, Quebecor, Glacier Media Group, Postmedia, and Kinetic, and of course to our title sponsor, News Media Canada. And a special shout out to the Advertising Club of Toronto partners, Ad Standards, Agency Wars, Captivate, IAB Canada, ICA, News Media Canada, NABS, and Strategy. Without partners, without sponsors, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you so much for your participation and your support. And with that, I'm going to turn the home stretch over to my colleague, Carrie Anderson. Carrie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Norm. Thank you very much, Sean. That was fantastic. To the panelists, thank you for giving us your time today. You have had some very insightful information for us, and I appreciate everything that you've done. I just want to acknowledge somebody that has been a very important figure in the news world, and that is John Hondrick. John Hondrick, who has served as both editor and publisher of the Toronto Star, as well as chair of Torstar, passed away on Saturday, February 5th at age 75. Within minutes of this announcement, people from across Toronto and Canada shared their memories and tributes of the newspaper man, lawyer, and philanthropist. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wrote, John Hondrick was a giant of Canadian journalism who believed deeply in building a better Toronto and a better Canada. John Hondrick truly believed in Toronto, our city's promise, and its unique place in the world. Wrote further on saying that John was a larger than life Torontonian who left us too soon and who will truly be missed. The tributes were everywhere and unending. Even today, I know people are still deeply sad in knowing that he is gone. From my perspective, and that of many who knew him and worked with him, knew John the man. He was inspirational, charismatic, genuine, encouraging, motivating, but ultimately, he was our fearless leader in the newspaper industry who treated everyone as family. His door was always open. He always had time for people, especially the worker bees. John was someone to this world needed. He was always standing up for the underdog and making sure that injustices were exposed, but he didn't just highlight the issues, he tried to be part of the solution. His death has had a profound impact on many, and we only hope that his drive to better this world lives on in all of us. And we're just gonna have a little clip there of
Quite frankly, I can honestly say that I've had the ride of a lifetime.
I found it was really important to include that clip because if you knew John, that was a tagline that he used, and I just thought it would be the appropriate thing to do to leave us with his voice. We're now going to turn it over to just a little reminder or a little bit of information, but the NNAs are being held.
Frankly,
they're upcoming on May 6th. And so there's just a little bit of information there for you. The winners in 22 categories and the 2021 Journalist of the Year will be announced in live stream. So it's an important event. And I actually, just while this presentation was going on, saw some of the finalists. So it looks like it's going to be quite a big celebration that night. So if everybody can join, that would be great. There's the information there. I just want to say in recapping, thank you all very, very much for being with us today. I appreciate everybody's time. I know everybody's got a busy schedule, and I know webinars have become crazy abundant over the last couple of years, but I do appreciate your time and thank you. And that is all. Thanks for attending the event. Have a great day.